Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shrunyavadi Pastyacharane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All right, devotees, so yes, just back, it was, what was it, verse 10, verse 9, Lord Krishna displayed the universal form. In Sanskrit, it's called Vishva Rupa. Vishva meaning universe, Rupa meaning form. Hare Krishna. It's also called Virat Rupa, which is also the same sort of idea. Virat is more or less universe. So that was verse 9. Krishna displayed it, having given Arjuna the vision back in verse 8. So then verse 9, then 10, 11, 12, and 13, it's the initial darshan for Arjuna, just the initial experience, amazing experience. Let's just read those verses again, why not? Arjuna saw in that universal form unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes, unlimited wonderful visions. The form was decorated with many celestial ornaments and bore many divine upraised weapons. He wore celestial garlands and garments, and many divine scents were smeared over his body. All was wondrous, brilliant, unlimited, all expanding. And then 12, if hundreds of thousands of suns were to rise at once into the sky, their radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in that universal form. 13. At that time, Arjuna could see in the universal form of the Lord the unlimited expansions of the universe situated in one place, although divided into many, many thousands. Yes. So this description and Arjuna's reaction to it, it's going to go on till verse 31. So we're reading this evening from verse 14. There is a subsection, verse 14 to verse 19, titled Arjuna's own vision of the universal form, and like his reaction, his response to seeing the universal form. So this is verse 14 to verse 19. It's just an immediate description. And then Arjuna goes on after that, but let's explain about that when we've finished this subsection here. So what we read, we just read the verses from the previous subsection where Krishna just shows the universal form, and Arjuna doesn't say anything yet, but he's just observing, and Sanjay is describing to Dhritarashtra, what an astonishing sight. But then starting with verse 14, really, starting with verse 14, It's Arjuna now. Arjuna's going to be speaking, but his reaction, his response, well, he's seeing that form, and he sees it's not so nice. And he becomes, and the whole experience becomes increasingly frightening. So, okay, verses 14 to 19, let's just read the verses, then we'll go back through them in a little more detail. 14, then bewildered and astonished, his hair standing on end, Arjuna bowed his head to offer obeisances, and with folded hands began to pray to the Supreme Lord. 15, Arjuna said, my dear Lord Krishna, I see assembled in your body all the demigods and various other living entities. I see Brahma sitting on the lotus flower, as well as Lord Shiva and all the sages and divine serpents. 16. O Lord of the universe, O universal form, I see in your body many, many arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes, expanded everywhere without limit. I see in you no end, no middle, and no beginning. 17. Your form is difficult to see because of its glaring effulgence, spreading on all sides like blazing fire or the immeasurable radiance of the sun. Yet I see this glowing form everywhere, adorned with various crowns, clubs, and discs. 18. You are the supreme primal objective. You are the ultimate resting place of all this universe. You are inexhaustible, and you are the oldest. You are the maintainer of the eternal religion, the personality of Godhead. This is my opinion. 19. You are without origin, middle, or end. Your glory is unlimited. You have numberless arms, and the sun and moon are your eyes. I see you with blazing fire coming forth from your mouth, burning this entire universe by your own radiance. Whew, Krishna. Well, as Arjuna says in verse 17, it's difficult to look at the form. But shortly, once we've finished this subsection, we'll see it becomes impossible to look at it. He looks and looks and looks, but he gradually reaches the point where he cannot manage. Anyway, that's coming, but not right here. Right here, it's difficult, but he's managing. Okay, so let's go through the verses and purports. 14, then bewildered and astonished, his hair standing on end, Arjuna bowed his head to offer obeisances, and with folded hands began to pray to the Supreme Lord. So in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada notes, first paragraph, that of course, generally up to this point, I mean not just generally, but up to this point, the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna was simply one of friendship. Actually, they're cousins, or as you know, in the tradition is said, They're cousin brothers. So they're basically like brothers. They're close. They're very close. And the relationship is just very warm, affectionate, as you'd expect from brothers who get on very nicely with each other. Vetam. Yeah, but as Prabhupada notes here, particularly in the first paragraph of the purport of verse 14, that the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna has immediately changed just like that. Is sort of just like a very explosive experience. Wow, that's unbelievable. And he's just changed. Arjuna has just changed his attitude towards Krishna. As we mentioned, and Prabhupada mentions here, that previously Krishna and Arjuna had a relationship based on friendship. And, well, we all know what friendly relationships are like. And I mean particularly very close, friendly, affectionate, friendly relationships. There's not formality and you know, some ceremonial types of things which are done, no saluting, yes, sir. Whatever you say, sir. No, they're friends, they're brothers. It's just very informal and warm. But now, Arjuna offers obeisances. Normally you don't do that with a friend, at least an intimate friend. But this is what he does. It's practically the first thing that he does. His hair is standing on end. Yeah, it means it's a very dramatic, emotional, and sort of nerve-tingling experience, just very shaking experience. And he puts his hands together like this in the Pranam Mudra, and he begins praying to Krishna. And you don't do that with a friend, a very close friend. You never do that. So his relationship, Prabhupada explains, thus Arjuna's relationship becomes one of wonder, rather than friendship. In the technical sense, the term would be, it's not mentioned here, adbhuta. Adbhuta. There are 5 primary rasas and 7 secondary. The primary ones are neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental, and conjugal. And then the 7 secondary, well, one of them is adbhuta, wonder. Oh, just, yeah, very deeply struck by some very, like, impressive manifestation. So, yes. So, all of these relationships can be had with Krishna, and they are had by different devotees. And so, therefore, Krishna is the ocean of all relationships. Yeah. So generally, of course, Arjuna, Prabhupada says in the second paragraph, by nature he's very sober, very calm, quiet, peaceful. He's a Kshatriya, so he's a warrior. He's a powerful man. but he's not like one of these loudmouth, show-off types at all. Although he shows his prowess when the need arises, no problem. But otherwise, in his general dealings, he's very pleasant. Yes. And Prabhupada says here, it's kind of, maybe it's a mixture of moods to some degree. But Arjuna actually became ecstatic, Prabhupada says. His hair standing up was ecstasy. Yes. And he wasn't afraid yet. That is coming, more or less. Rather, Prabhupada says at the end of the purport, he was not, of course, afraid. He was affected by the wonders of the Supreme Lord. The immediate context is wonder. His natural loving friendship was overwhelmed by wonder, and thus he reacted in this way. Just like Mother Yashoda, when Mother Yashoda looked into the mouth of Krishna, when Lord Balaram accused Krishna of eating dirt and told Mother Yashoda and insisted that she look and see in his mouth. So she looked, but she didn't see dirt. She saw the universe. Yes, and when that happened, it was such a striking experience, so unexpected and never before experienced, that, similar to this here, that she was affected by the wonders of the Lord. And so, in terms of Mother Yashoda, her natural loving, motherly mood was overwhelmed by wonder. A very similar experience. Not quite as dramatic, but very similar. We'll say more. We'll contrast the reaction of Arjuna, which we're reading about, the reaction of Mother Yashoda to seeing at least something very, very similar. We'll talk about that as we go on. But for the time being, let us continue to verse 15. Arjuna said, "My dear Lord Krishna, I see assembled in your body all the demigods and various other living entities. I see Brahma sitting on the lotus flower, as well as Lord Shiva and all the sages and divine serpents." So, yes, well, Arjuna's basically seeing everything at one time. So he sees Brahma, he sees demigods, different demigods. He sees different divine serpents, particularly Vasuki is the most prominent of those serpents. And it seems that he's also seeing Garbhodakshai Vishnu down the bottom of the universe. Yes. So Prabhupada says, that means that from the beginning to the end, everything could be seen by Arjuna, who was sitting in one place on his chariot. This was made possible by the grace of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. 16. 16. O Lord of the universe, O universal form, I see in your body many, many arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes, expanded everywhere without limit. I see in you no end, no middle, and no beginning. And Prabhupada just gives one sentence purport. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is unlimited. Thus, through him, everything could be seen. And 17, here, a little bit of tension, a little bit of stress is manifesting, or at least Arjuna is admitting it, that I'm struggling, it's a bit difficult here. Your form is difficult to see because of its glaring effulgence, spreading on all sides like blazing fire or the immeasurable radiance of the sun. Yet I see this glowing form everywhere, adorned with various crowns, clubs, and discs. So, it's there's actually no purport at all, but, it's quite clear that Arjuna is becoming stressed because it is really, it's at least overwhelming. At least overwhelming. And we go on to 18, which also doesn't have a purport. You're the supreme primal objective. You're the ultimate resting place of all this universe. You're inexhaustible and you're the oldest. You're the maintainer of the eternal religion, the personality of Godhead. This is my opinion. Okay, and now verse 19 is the last verse in this subsection, and then it becomes deeper. It really does. So verse 19, you are without origin, middle, or end. Your glory is unlimited. You have numberless arms, and the sun and moon are your eyes. I see you with blazing fire coming forth from your mouth, burning this entire universe by your own radiance. Wow, it's amazing. And you can see that Arjuna is becoming more and more deeply affected. So, let's just read the purport. There is no limit to the extent of the 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here and in many other places there is repetition, but according to the scriptures, repetition of the glories of Krishna is not a literary weakness. It is said that at a time of bewilderment or wonder or of great ecstasy, statements are repeated over and over. That is not a flaw. Okay. All right, so now from verse 20 to verse 31, it's another subsection. It's another subsection. And it is basically Arjuna is seeing a particular aspect of the universal form. This is called the Kala Rupa, which means the form of time, from verse 20 to verse 31. So we'll see, maybe we'll go through the whole thing this evening. Anyway, we'll just take it step by step. So yes, so this is the Kala Rupa, the form of time. And time is very destructive. Shri Shri Radha Radhana, Shri Giri Govardhan, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Yeah, time is very destructive. It kills everything. Ultimately, it destroys the whole universe, actually. When the time comes, everything falls to pieces, and that's the end of the universe for the time being. So form is very amazing. And when Arjuna sees this particular aspect of the universal form, Kala Rupa, the form of time, it's completely horrifying to him. And he sees all sorts of shocking sights, particularly in verse 26, 27, 28. He sees soldiers and just practically everyone, the vast majority of all the soldiers on the battlefield, being eaten by the universal form of the Lord. Oh, that is quite something. So let us read through, because you know, the purports here are short, or in numerous cases, there are so many cases actually, there are no purports. In fact, the majority of cases, or pretty close to the majority, there are actually no purports at all. It's just the whole experience of Arjuna. All right, anyway, let us begin with verse 20. Although you are one, you spread throughout the sky and the planets and all space between. O Great One, seeing this wondrous and terrible form, all the planetary systems are perturbed. Yes, perturbed, frightened. Yeah. So Prabhupada does make a comment, interesting comment, is that he says, Dyav Apritivyo, the space between heaven and earth, and Lokatrayam, the three worlds, are significant words in this verse, because it appears that not only did Arjuna see this universal form of the Lord, but others in other planetary systems saw it also. Arjuna's seeing of the universal form was not a dream. All whom the Lord endowed with divine vision saw that universal form on the battlefield. Right. And Prabhupada makes the point there. Prabhupada makes the point that the Lord had actually given that special vision to various others, demigods and different people will see. So Arjuna continues, all the hosts of demigods are surrendering before you and entering into you. Some of them, very much afraid, are offering prayers with folded hands. Hosts of great sages and perfected beings, crying, all peace, are praying to you by singing the Vedic hymns. And Prabhupada notes, the demigods and all the planetary systems feared the terrific manifestation of the universal form and its glaring effulgence, and so prayed for protection. Yeah, so even the demigods are shocked. They are in shock. 22. All the various manifestations of Lord Shiva, the Adityas, the Vasus, the Sadyas, the Vishvadevas, the two Ashvis, the Maruts, the forefathers, the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Asuras, and the perfected demigods are beholding you in wonder. Anyway, it's an interesting point that the Asuras means some of the celestial demons who are definitely not devotees. They've also been given this vision. They're also seeing it, and they're also beholding it in wonder. Verse 23. O mighty armed one, all the planets with their demigods are disturbed at seeing your great form, with its many faces, eyes, arms, thighs, legs, and bellies, and your many terrible teeth. And as they are disturbed, so am I. So it's particularly the Kala Rupa, that aspect. Other parts were impressive, even, quite striking. But this, the Kala Rupa, is just overpowering and devastating. Devastating. So everyone is disturbed. Everyone who's seeing it is disturbed. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the comment that everyone is actually filled with terror. Filled with terror. And Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan says, Arjuna's condition is becoming pitiful. He's just about to collapse and just lose it. So, 24, O all-pervading Vishnu, seeing you with your many radiant colors touching the sky, your gaping mouths, and your great glowing eyes, my mind is perturbed by fear. I can no longer maintain my steadiness or equilibrium of mind. Arjuna is losing control. Yes. So now we move on to verse 25. O Lord of Lords, O refuge of the worlds, please be gracious to me. I cannot keep my balance, seeing thus your blazing, death-like faces and awful teeth. In all directions I am bewildered. So it's getting even worse. It's getting even worse. So I can just mention here that we mentioned how Mother Yashoda, she saw the universal form within the mouth of Krishna, whether she saw exactly what Arjuna saw is not completely clear, but definitely she saw something like it. She saw the universe with the planets and herself. And this actually is discussed a little bit by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elsewhere, that we can understand, at least get a glimpse of the difference in consciousness between Mother Yashoda, who is a Brijbasi, a resident of Vrindavan. She is in the motherly Vatsalya rasa, parental rasa, which is higher than the rasa that Arjuna is in. He's in friendship. She is on a higher level just in terms of rasa, but she's a Brijbasi too. And Arjuna is not a Brijbasi. He's a resident of Hastinapur. Hastinapur, Dwaraka, he moves between these places, but definitely the Brijbasis are much higher. And even amongst those in the Vatsalya rasa, those in the parental rasa, of all the devotees in the parental rasa, Mother Yashoda is the highest. She is the last one before the gopis, the associates of Radharani. She's the highest before the conjugal rasa starts. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point that Yashoda, Mother Yashoda, when she saw what was essentially or more or less what Arjuna saw, she did not become bewildered and devastated. And as Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan says, pitiful, just like hopelessly lost due to the experience. Mother Yashoda, when she saw that universal form, of course she was very astonished, but she didn't forget that Krishna was her son. And rather, she was thinking, oh, look at this. Many people have told me Krishna is some big important person. I never believed them because he's my son. But now I can see why they were saying things like that. Oh, look at this, isn't this impressive? And she said, you know, people have said he is God. He's my son, but it seems he's God also. And then Mother Yashoda said, I'm such a fortunate woman. How many women have God for their son? So it was a totally different mood to this devastation. Even Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point that for Arjuna, the experience was so devastating and so emotionally overwhelming, and so overwhelming for his nervous system, just his whole psyche, all his psychological internal functionings just got thrown out completely. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that for Arjuna, it was more or less like having a heart attack. When people have heart attacks, of course, so many don't survive. And those who do survive, if they have a real, they really get knocked down by the heart attack, then sure, they never forget it. It's very devastating. And many die. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also makes the point that Arjuna would have died because it was too much for his heart and his system. He would have died, but because he was a Kshatriya and he had a lot of experience of very horrible, violent types of scenes and situations, where, very ghastly scenes of people's bodies getting cut to pieces and heads being cut off and people getting crushed and all these sorts of things in battle, because he was a Kshatriya. Because he had that type of experience, he didn't die. Because he was sort of used to violence and extreme heaviness and dramaticness. Yes, but so he didn't die, but he's close. And now, like we read or mentioned, verses 26, 27, and 28, particularly, and 29 for that matter, and 30 for that matter. Krishna. Yes. So for the next some number of verses, it gets even more shocking. It gets even more shocking. So what he's seeing, what he's going to see, actually, what he is going to see is something which has not happened yet, but which is going to happen, because the battle has not started. This is all, Krishna's trying to bring Arjuna to the point of fighting, and then the battle's going to begin. So Arjuna is going to be seeing into the future a little, because he's going to be seeing how all these different warriors, particularly the warriors, and then later, then just shortly after, he's going to see everyone, but immediately, particularly all the warriors, the sons of Dhritarashtra, etc., how they're all going to be killed. And not just killed, but devoured, effectively devoured, eaten by the universal form. Okay, so let's get into it. 26 and 27. All the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their allied kings, and Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and our chief soldiers also, are rushing into your fearful mouths, and some I see trapped, with heads smashed between your teeth. Or between your teeth. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So now it's interesting that both groups of soldiers are mentioned, but the soldiers on the other side, Dhritarashtra's side, opposing Arjuna, they are mentioned first, and then they are mentioned more. All the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their allied kings, and Bhishma, Drona, Karna. And then as far as Arjuna's side, all our chief soldiers also. So there is more focus there on the opposition. And Prabhupada says that from the beginning of the purport, in a previous verse, the Lord promised to show Arjuna things he would be very interested in seeing. So, this is referring actually to verse 7. In verse 7 of this chapter, which said, I'll read it to you back now. O Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine. This universal form can show you whatever you now desire to see, and whatever you may want to see in the future. All right. So now, Arjuna is seeing all the soldiers basically, or at least so many, because hardly any survived. Maybe 99.9% died. It was something like that. Some just minute fraction of the total number of soldiers survived. So now Arjuna is seeing all the soldiers on both sides being destroyed, but first of all, and particularly, the soldiers on the opposing side, even Bhishma, but then also his own soldiers, Arjuna's own soldiers. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport here, he mentions in the middle of the purport, Arjuna sees that the leaders of the opposing party, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and all the sons of Dhritarashtra and their soldiers, and Arjuna's own soldiers are all being annihilated. This is an indication that after the death of nearly all the persons assembled at Kurukshetra, Arjuna will emerge victorious. Yeah. So the Lord meant, when he said like that, see in my body the future victory and defeat in this war. So 28. As the many waves of the rivers flow into the ocean, so do all these great warriors enter into your blazing mouths. So, then, well, let me also read 29 because it's kind of connected. I see all people rushing full speed into your mouths, as moths dash to destruction in a blazing fire. So Prabhupada has not given purports to these two, but just by way of explanation for 28 and 29, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vijayabhushan, they comment that in these two verses, 28 and 29, there are two types of sort of images being presented of people being killed. So one image from 28 is of rivers which naturally flow into the ocean, and then in 29, moths, which they deliberately, I'm sure you've seen many times, they're attracted to the flame and then they get burnt up by the flame and they die. So in other words, what is being said between 28 and 29 is that two types of people are being consumed in two different ways. First is Bhishma and Drona, because they're devotees. So they'll go to Krishna in a natural way. But then the second category is people like Duryodhana, who was a demon. And he's like the moths. He and people like him on the battlefield, they're like the moths going into the blazing fire and just being burnt up. Whereas the other pious devotees, Bhishma and Drona, even though they're on the other side, they're going in a natural way, flowing into the ocean. Oh, Krishna. So verse 30, O Vishnu, I see you devouring all people from all sides with your flaming mouths, covering all the universe with your effulgence. You are manifest with terrible, scorching rays. And just note, well, this is verse 30. Let's just have a look. So there's no purport. Prabhupada doesn't give a purport, but our two acharyas do. And they draw our attention to the first word in the Sanskrit, which is leiliyase, which means you are licking. Grasamana, you are devouring and licking. So our acharyas say, actually both Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladeva Vijayabhushan say, the Lord was devouring the warriors and licking his lips repeatedly. Baladeva Vijayabhushan says, you lick repeatedly your lips, stained with their blood in fury. So you lick repeatedly in fury your lips stained with their blood. So it's not just the warriors, of course, it's everyone. So, Arjuna, that's about all he can manage. So then he speaks 31. O Lord of Lords, so fierce of form, please tell me who you are. I offer my obeisances unto you. Please be gracious to me. You are the primal Lord. I want to know about you, for I do not know what your mission is. So Arjuna, he's done. He cannot go any further with this whole experience. So he asks two very important questions. My dear Krishna, who are you? And secondly, what is your mission? What are you doing here? What is this all about? So, for the answers to those questions, wow, they're really amazing. Yeah, and it's going to go into a very wonderful part of Bhagavad Gita when Krishna responds. So, you will have to tune in on Monday evening. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.